Hi, everybody. Good evening here from the Temple of Silence in Finland. And tonight is our Reappearance of the Christ meditation, at least our night. And some of you will be picking this up at a different time. Well, every Thursday, you know, when we do the Reappearance of the Christ, it is a Jupiter day, a second-ray day, and we're preparing for the return of the Christ and his masters of the wisdom. We are preparing for that great event, which will mean so much for the transition of humanity into the fifth kingdom of nature, and the appearance of the possibility of the first initiation being given widely, broadly, basically, what we understand is that when the Christ reappears, it will signal that humanity as a whole, not every member of course, but excuse me, humanity as a whole has taken the first initiation. So that's what we're really working on. It is the most important event in the introduction to the Aquarian age. It probably will not really begin for about another 100 years when, technically speaking, we will be finished with the shorter age of Pisces and ready and with the commanding influence of the sixth ray, and we will be ready for Aquarius and the seventh ray. Not only in the sense of a 2,500 year period, but also before long, a 25,000 year, at least approximately, age of Aquarius will begin, whether or not it will be accompanied by the by a seventh ray cycle. So I always like to begin a little bit with the reading from the Tibetan. And I'll just switch over here for a moment so you can better see. There we go. Well, this section is about the teachings of the Christ, what he will teach. Now that of course is a very interesting subject, because after all, excuse my, I'm sorry about this kind of catch in my throat here. He will teach as the major teacher of the Aquarian age certain very important things which so many members of humanity do not yet understand, or at least they don't accept it, you know. That's the problem. And so the first thing we'll deal with, and not all of it, it's in its entirety, is the teaching on the law of rebirth. Let's see if there's anything else up here. Well, there are lots of things. You know what I really recommend? Read the book once a year. Read this little book that outlines for us our major usefulness and the major event on our planet, the coming of the, or the reappearance of the Christ with his masters of the wisdom and their initiates and the disciples of those initiates. and also the formation of the new group of world servers. A very important event that I think really began to take place at the great centennial conclave of 1925. I think that's when the seeds of the new group of world servers were really planted, and so many of us sorry there. So many of us aspire to be members of that group, which is no easy thing, because at one point DK says to the true members of the world servers that they should look out for those who show signs of having taken the first initiation, and even those who show signs of having taken the second initiation. So let's say that the true members of the new group are often initiates of the second degree and even higher in the higher ranks. Anyway, let's take a look at this before we actually get into the meditation proper. So it tells us that Christ will teach the law of rebirth, and I really have the sense that people will at last listen and learn, coming from one who will be widely recognized as a great and illustrious figure. So this law, says the Tibetan, is the major corollary of the law of evolution. So there's nothing really, let's say, unnatural about it. It is the means by which evolution does occur, and by means of which the personality or the outer form is fit, gradually fit to represent the inner human being and even the inner life of the sub-kingdoms of nature. DK goes on, it has never been grasped or properly understood in the West. Well, there we go. We're starting off at a disadvantage. And in the East, he goes on, where it is acknowledged as a governing principle of life, it has not proved useful because it has been soporific in its effect. Soporific, you know, means sleep-inducing. It has in the East been soporific, and a detriment actually to progress, he says. Well, we have to be alive and alert to take care of our opportunities as we see them present. But he explains why this does not occur in the East. The Eastern student regards it as giving him plenty of time. And he goes on to say, this has negated the driving effort to achieve a goal. And it occurs to me at this point from astrology that DK talks about the driving effect of the rising sign, driving you ever closer to the true center of your spiritual life. So we must have that drive. The average Christian, he says, confuses the law of rebirth with what he calls the transmigration of souls. That would be, let me say, the changing of kingdoms. Well, now you're a man, but later you'll be a worm and all that. It's a mixture. It's a confusion. It brings no clarity, and it is false. But that's what the average Christian does, confuse the law of rebirth with what he calls the transmigration of souls going on, and frequently believes that the law of rebirth signifies the passing of human beings into the bodies of animals or of lower forms of life. Now, this is not correct. You can have a human being who chooses the left-hand path, and they will begin to manifest in a human way certain bestial or beast-like qualities, but they do not become in that solar system a plant or some kind of animal or a mineral, whatever. Once they're human, unless they really mess things up, they are human. It may be that they have to be reprocessed because the solar angel cuts off connection with them as personalities, and they simply disintegrate and have to start all over again, but they continue to do that as a human being. Well, DK goes on to say, such is by no means the case. As the life of God progresses onward through form after form, that life in the subhuman kingdoms of nature proceeds progressively from mineral forms into vegetable forms, and from these vegetable forms into animal forms. Let me add, there are these transitional forms that are found between kingdoms. DK tells us they're rather mysterious, and I'm not sure we can identify them. But, sometimes if you look at a plant that actually eats insects, that is a quality of both the plant kingdom, where they began, and a quality of the animal kingdom, whither they are oriented. So anyway, vegetable forms into animal forms, from the animal form stage, the life of God passes into the human kingdom. I'll add, of course, the fourth kingdom, and of course, a tremendous transition Sometimes I have to cough. I don't want to do that in your ear, so I seem to disappear for a moment. Um, so, the life of God, and notice who it belongs to, really. It's not like it's an isolated, kind of encapsulated life. It really is the life of God, the planetary logos. It goes into the human kingdom and becomes subject to the law of rebirth and not the law of transmigration. So, let's say it holds its kingdom, even though it may miss opportunity and even though it may behave in such a way that it has to be reprocessed. To those who know something of the law of rebirth or of reincarnation, the mistake seems ridiculous. But we know from today's conspiracy theories and the number of devotees of those theories that the human being can indeed believe ridiculous things. Now here's a point that DK makes, and we have to remember that when we are speaking with likely prospects. And that is the doctrine or theory of reincarnation strikes the Orthodox Christian with horror. Well, people are impatient, and they think that in one short life, by believing the right things, the Orthodox presentation, that they've got heaven all sewed up forever. But the Tibetan goes on and he says, yet, if one asks this this Orthodox Christian, the question which the disciples asked Christ about the blind man, and here's the question, Master, did this man sin or his fathers that he was born blind? And that's from John, Roman numeral 9, 2, John 9, 2. And when asked that question, your average Orthodox Christian, well, let's say this sentence applies to them. They refuse the implications, or they express amusement, or dismay, as the case may be. Let's say they don't take the implication. How is a man going to be born blind? Because of his own sin. That must mean that he preceded his own birth in the present body. Well, if we were less impatient, and if we really looked at the process of esoteric development that the ageless wisdom presents, we would see the logic um, of reincarnation. Right now, if a genius appears, let's say a Mozart, or, well, music is my field, so I'll stick to that for the moment. And he can write music at the age of 4 and so forth. People tend to attribute that to his heredity, and by that I mean his physical heredity, as if psychological talents and abilities could arise from matter itself, when we actually know that the ageless wisdom presents a reverse picture, and that the inner attainment determines the outer form. I've talked to a number of people about that, and if they're used to thinking very materialistically, well, that's how they see it, and again, they're a little bit dismayed at the thought that the contrary derivation might be true. So, going on with the Tibetan, the presentation to the world of the thought by the average occult or theosophical exponent has been, on the whole, deplorable. Well, DK is not exactly approving of the lack of skill in action in the manner in which we are presenting the subject of reincarnation. We can all be sure the Christ will do much better. He goes on and says, "It has been deplorable because it has been so unintelligently presented. The best that can be said," he says, "is that these exponents, have familiarized the general public with the theory." Well, let me say, at least you have to hear about it, before you can protest or before you can accept. He goes on to say, had it, however, been more intelligently presented, it might have been more generally accepted in the West. If the goal of right human relations will be taught universally by the Christ, the emphasis of his teaching must be laid upon the law of rebirth. Now think about that. When such an illustrious figure, whom every eye will see, is presenting this doctrine. So this is, the Tibetan goes on, this is inevitably so, because the recognition of this law, in the recognition of this law, and this is quite a statement, will be found the solution of all problems of humanity and the answer to much human questioning. Well, I think that's, I'd like to just go on here, but we have a meditation to do. And so basically what I'll do here, see if I, yeah. What I'll do is say that this is the ending of ROC on the 15th of July, and beginning next time. And I won't go on a big hunt as to when that next time will be. It will be, and we'll get to it. And it's so interesting. Now down here, all these things about the law of rebirth must be what, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 things said about the law of rebirth, and maybe we'll get to that next time when we work together. But right now, I'd like to switch a little bit, and you know, I'm fascinated by this because what he said, it's going to solve just about all human problems. What once it is logically accepted. So we have that to look forward to in our many, I think quite a few incarnations during the age of Aquarius. So I'll fade back here and for a moment get rid of that and then work with our meditation. So the very first thing is that we breathe in the white light. And we see each of our co-disciples in the light. And we focus on our own triangle or triangles. And we visualize the flow of love and goodwill passing between the members of our triangle or triangles. Seems like a long, slow process to build these triangles. But slowly and behind the scenes, they are being built, with the implications that humanity can be redeemed through these triangles. Now, for the meditation itself, we achieve a positive and intended personality quietness. And we formulate clearly to ourselves and in our own words the answers to the following questions. And let me say that we may gain insight as week after week or every 2 weeks or so we repeat these questions to ourselves. New light may come. So, and I think, okay, well, this is a slightly different version, but I'll just bring the questions forward. As a member of the new group of world servers, what is my specific fixed intention at this moment of dedicated contact with my soul? Question number 2. Is my concentrated, expressed personality purpose in line with hierarchical intention as far as I am permitted to know it? Question number 3. Have I, in my own personal daily life, earned the right, because of definite effort, and not so much because of success, to stand with those servers who are now undertaking the work of preparation? Now, DK advises us that this is the one time in the meditation where we think of our self. And we're doing that because it is a method of personality-focused attention and does align our personality upon the mental plane. Now, having answered these questions in the light of the soul, then say with emphasis the following very powerful mantram, which in my view separates the sheep from the goats, as it were. Better to be a goat, which means on the path of initiation and not blindly following as the sheep do. And here are the words. Forgetting the things which lie behind, I will strive towards my higher spiritual possibilities. I dedicate myself anew to the service of the coming one, and will do all I can to prepare men's minds and hearts for that event. I have no other life intention. Now, dwell on that. Dwell on the kind of commitment that represents. I think you can see what a tremendous commitment that represents, especially at this time of preparation. Now, our next task is to visualize the world situation as best you can, and in terms of your major world interest? And with what knowledge of world affairs you may possess? And as part of this, we see the mass of human beings everywhere glowing with a dim light. And here and there, points of brighter light where members of the new group of world servers and men of spiritual intention and of loving hearts are working for their fellow men, fellow human beings. And then we visualize through the creative imagination the vivid light of the hierarchy. Streaming towards humanity and slowly merging with the light which is already in human beings. So a great brightening agent, brightening the light of the spiritual people and brightening the light of average humanity, average non-aspiring humanity. And then together we sound the first stanza of the third great invocation. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. And then we ponder on the reappearance of the Christ. And we realize that no matter by what name he may be called in the many world religions, he is still the same great identity. And we reflect and speculate upon the possible results of his reappearance. It will be his era, no matter what people do to plan to control that era, it will be his era. And when will he come? This is what the Tibetan says. The knowledge that he is ready and anxious publicly to appear to his loved humanity only adds to the sense of general frustration. And another very vital question arises. That question: for what period of time must we endure, struggle and fight? The reply comes with clarity. He will come unfailingly when a measure of peace has been restored, when the principle of sharing is at least in process of controlling economic affairs, and when churches and political groups have begun to clean house. Think about those. then he can and will come. Then the kingdom of God will be publicly recognized and will no longer be a thing of dreams and of wishful thinking and orthodox hope. And then we say the second stanza of the invocation. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. So we endeavor to concentrate our fixed intention to serve and to spread love in our surroundings. And we realize that insofar as we can do these things, we are attempting to blend our personal will with the divine will. Let's call it the divine will to good. And then we will say stanza 3 of the great invocation. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men. The purpose which the masters know and serve. So we have to ask, are we living a purpose-driven life? Or are we simply wandering a bit from here to there? Hopefully, a purpose-driven life, because as we think ahead practically to what we can do in the coming week to further the preparations for the coming of the Christ, it's got to be number one, in our thought, on the front burner, you know. Whatever else may be our obligations. We have to remember that we are part of a working group of forerunners who are called at this time to act and to do their part to manifest the plan. So can we somehow have a plan for the coming week and determine how we will help in the preparations? Maybe write that, some elements of that plan, write it down. What is your part? What is my part? How are we really helping to prepare? So let us respond to the vibration of the Christ as much as we can. Let us commit ourselves in His name. We have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. Now we will sound the Om 3 times, dedicating the threefold personality to the work of preparation. Thank you, friends, for your participation and your presence. I think, gosh, I hope you have received the weekly schedule. I think it's Cosmic Fire tomorrow at 5 o'clock GMT. I'll let you know if there are any changes. we are addressing the problems of humanity, and we are trying to come up with creative solutions in line with the plan. Now, to close, I'll play a selection from the Reappearance of the Christ oratorio, and hopefully it will inspire us to think of how the Christ blesses humanity every day beneath his great pine tree in his garden.
Until